Hey everybody, it's Randy Wolfe. Welcome back to video number 7 in the video series. Congratulations, you found the deal. Now it's time to lock it up. But most beginners either overpay or they scare the seller away. So today I'm going to give you the exact negotiation strategies I've used to close tons of deals and to win the seller's trust. So let's make offers the smart way. And let's dive in now. So the first point I want to make is it's not just the price, it's terms and it's timing. The offer isn't just about how much money you're putting on the table. I know that seems like it would always be the case. It's all about the money. But in fact, you can beat out higher offers just by offering better terms and timing. Does the seller need to move fast, for example? Are they overwhelmed and they just want a smooth, simple process? Offer flexibility, not just dollars. You can do things like shorter inspection periods, faster closings, or even letting them stay in the property for a bit. And these things can solve real problems for the seller and make your offer stronger. And sometimes you can pick up properties by paying less, but just maybe giving them better terms. The next thing is understanding seller motivation. Now, this is absolutely critical. If you know why the seller is selling, you can craft an offer that speaks directly to their needs. Think about that. If you know exactly what it is that they're selling for, and you get down to the core of the issue, then you can actually speak to those needs. So ask the right questions. What's your ideal timeline? What would make this sale the absolute easiest for you? What are you hoping to avoid? Some want speed, some want certainty, some just want the house gone with no hassles. Okay, find out their motivation and you'll be 3 steps ahead of most other buyers. Now, as I said before, a little bit alluded to, you don't need a suitcase full of cash to get your offer accepted. You just need to make it easy and appealing. You can use like shorter inspection times, flexible closing dates, seller rent backs. There's situations where people need to sell their house. They haven't found another property yet and they're worried about that transition period, and you can do seller rent backs to them. A good way that I like to do this is at closing, I have the attorney in South Carolina, but if it's in a non-attorney state, you can use an escrow company, whatever, that actually holds back the rent money. And that way I'm guaranteed that they're going to pay the rent. So you can do things like that. You can cover their closing costs. Just make them feel like working with you is hitting that easy button. It's simple, it's certain, it's fast. That's really what wins deals, especially from a motivated seller. You want them to feel comfortable. You want to have that feeling of like you're helping them and that they feel kind of like it's a win-win type of situations. I'm a huge proponent, always do my best to try to make it feel like a win-win, because so much of selling and buying is emotional. There's a lot of emotion in it. And so if you can kind of let them get that good feeling where they feel good about the situation, they'll work with you oftentimes over someone who they don't feel comfortable with. By the way, real quick, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're releasing content every single week. Right here, this is actually a part of a video series. So we're having new videos drop on this video series and new videos dropping on future video series. If you want to go deeper, check out the private community. I'll put the link in the description below. That's where I break down real offer scenarios and even give feedback and mentorship for people in their deals that they're working on. So it's a great community. It's a lot of great fellowship inside of the community, a lot of great information. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is something that I personally use all of the time when I am negotiating. Maybe I shouldn't give this away on the internet, but I use this all the time, and that is anchoring. Anchoring is very, very important. Anchoring means setting the tone of the negotiation with your very first offer. So start lower than your max number. You don't want to just start out at your max number because it doesn't really make sense. People want to feel like they're getting a deal, and almost always people want to negotiate with you. Subconsciously, they feel like if you throw a number out, it doesn't even matter if it's a really fair number. Oftentimes they feel like that they've got to get you to come up higher for them to feel good about it. Again, going back to what I said previously about the emotion. Don't just throw out a random number. You need to be able to back it up with market data, repair costs, rental comps, and that sort of thing. Your opening number gives you room to negotiate up, but it still lands in the area where you kind of want to be. You got to be calm. Don't get too emotional about this. Keep it as business. One of the strategies that I often use is I may talk about how that other investors in that particular area are typically buying around X dollars per square foot. And I will say something like, and again, to keep the numbers simple on this video, like a lot of the investors in the area, you know, if it's 1,000 square foot home, for example, they're buying these houses for around $50 a square foot. And, you know, that would put your property at, I don't know, roughly about $50,000 or so. And usually when I say that in that scenario, scenario, they're either going to be kind of receptive to that, or they're going to go, oh no, well my house is I've done this, and this, and I'll come back, oh yeah, that's just kind of what things are going for. It really depends on your house and the situation that's going on there, that sort of thing. But I oftentimes try to get them to say a number first. But again, when we're talking about anchoring, you want to make sure your first number is in a place to where you can actually have some wiggle room. The other thing too is sometimes they don't know what their house is worth. They really don't. Like they have no real idea. So if you do the research and you say, okay, this house is worth, I could give them $80,000, and you say 80,000, they're going to immediately think, well, maybe I could get more somewhere else. Maybe I can get more. Well, how about you give me 100,000? So that's just why anchoring is key. The next thing when it comes to making your offer is you need to frame it as a win-win. I've said this before in the video, not just a low ball, but it needs to be a win-win. So nobody wants to feel like they're being taken advantage of. So instead of just throwing out your number, explain it. Say something like, here's how I came up with this number. These are the repair cost, holding cost, and resale value I'm seeing. That kind of transparency builds trust. It shows the seller that you've done your homework and that you're being fair. I had an offer just the other day. We had a call come in from our TV commercial, and my acquisition guy, he was at the gym getting his pump on. He might be watching this right now. And so I picked the phone up and I got on the phone and we had a great conversation. And this particular property was very difficult to comp. It was hard to comp. It was a nice property and it had some potential, but basically what they were looking for, when I run numbers, it was a good bit off. So I came back to her and I said, hey, here's the deal. Based on an after repair value of this amount, I think that we could do the renovation for this property for $85,000. Matter of fact, it was like, I think it was $400,000 or $425 after the repair value. We were looking at it. The repairs, I think, were around $85. So I think I ended up at offering around $200,000. And, they wanted, I think, like $300 and something. I said, here's the deal. I think you should speak to an agent and consider potentially listing this with an agent. I don't know that I'm going to be the best buyer for this. However, if the after repair value is a lot higher than $400,000, then let me know and I may get one or two of my agents to go out, take a look at it, because this property was actually out of town a good ways. So I was like, I'll get maybe two other agents that can take a look and kind of verify those numbers, and then I could offer you more money. She was very appreciative that I was so upfront and honest with her, and quite honestly, her parents don't want to renovate the property. So there is a good chance that she may actually end up giving me a call after she speaks to a real estate agent, and if they tell her instead of it being worth 400 or 425, it could be 500,000. What I would do is I would just verify that with maybe, like I said, two other agents, and if that's the case, I can give her more money. So it was just a good way to build trust and build rapport. May get that deal, I may not, but at the end of the day, it was definitely the way I felt was best to handle that. Another strategy is use your repair estimates to justify your offer. Sellers often do not realize how much repairs will cost, so walk them through the math. Not only do they not realize how much repairs will cost, but they also don't realize how much it costs with quiet costs. And hopefully, if you've been watching this video series, you know that quiet costs can end up costing you a lot of money. All right, so let them know, like, hey, based on the roof, the HVAC, the kitchen updates, cosmetics, we're looking at about $30,000 to $35,000 in repairs to get this property market ready. That shifts the conversation from you lowballing me to, okay, that makes sense. Facts can kind of help calm emotions. As I said earlier, sales is a very emotional thing oftentimes when you're dealing with people, particularly with their house. And most people, they can't really argue too much with the calculator. They may disagree with your numbers a little bit, but when you start kind of justifying your offer in a nice casual conversation, not getting defensive about it, but just being casual and having a good conversation, that kind of helps them start to understand and wrap their head around, okay, maybe this isn't as bad as I think. If I was going to do this, it's going to cost me all this money. I just don't want to even deal with it. Let me just sell it to this guy or girl. Whenever you're negotiating, what you say matters. Here are a few examples of things you can say to kind of shift the deal in your favor. You could say things like, if I could close in, say, 14 days, could we settle at this price? Or if I pay cash and cover all of your closing costs, would that make this an easier process for you at this price point? Or what would it take for us to make this a win-win deal today? These are the kind of phrases that you can say to kind of get them thinking and show that you have some flexibility, but you're confident without being pushy. You want to use them wisely. You do want to try to, Wolfe of Wall Street, he talks about the straight line system. There's these these different strategies and sales systems, but ultimately you always want to eventually try to get to the close, and you want to be overcoming objections while you're in your sales process. You want to be going ahead and hitting these objections on the front end so that when you do get to the close, you're able to go ahead and hopefully close the deal because you've covered all of the potential objectives. All right, sometimes the best negotiation strategy is to walk away. This is something that makes my wife so uncomfortable when we go places sometimes, and if there's something that she really wants and we're traveling and I'm just like, nope, that's not going to work, I do the walk away thing. Okay, if the numbers don't work or the seller won't budge, it is okay to say, hey, I totally understand. If things change, I'd love to stay in touch. One of the things that I like to say is, you know what, it's got to make sense for both of us. I completely understand. If anything does change, be sure to give me a call. I'd love to keep in touch with you and see how this thing works out for you. Something like that. It shows that you're serious, but that you're not desperate. Confidence is magnetic, and sometimes the seller will circle back after they realize you were their best option. So don't be afraid, if you have to walk away from a potential deal. All right, the next thing is get it in writing. Verbal agreements mean nothing in real estate. I can't tell you how many times someone has told me that they are going to buy the property I'm selling, or how many times people have said that they're going to sell me their property. And if it's not in writing, it means absolutely nothing. Always get your accepted offer in writing using a proper purchase agreement or a state-approved contract. You don't need a lawyer for every single deal. You don't need that, but you do need a clear outline of the terms, deadlines, and signatures. Make sure everything is documented and be sure that it gets signed. All right, so once that seller signs the contract, congrats, you officially have a signed purchase agreement. Now the clock starts ticking. You'd open escrow, schedule inspections, start your due diligence. If you're using financing, you need to get your lender everything they need ASAP. This is the phase where real professionals show up prepared so you don't lose time, money, or the deal. All right, boom. So now you have the contract. But now comes the part that protects your wallet and your future, and that is due diligence. In the next video of the series, I'll show you exactly what you need to check before you close on your first deal so you don't buy a money pit or a legitimate nightmare. Trust me, this next video is very, very important, so you don't want to miss it. As always, I appreciate you watching. Thanks for being here today, and I'll see you on the next one.